Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause again to our two speakers. Very insightful discussion, really. A lot of food for thought, really, how the different sectors can work together with the great and tremendous support from the government. How can we make good use of that and to work together between the public sector, the private sector, the corporates, and also the public to work together in creating a sustainable future. How important it is for us to really look into the ways that we can do and what we can do in our daily lives and also in our businesses to achieve the different goals that we want to achieve in sustainability. That's very important. Up next, we will have another panel discussion, and the first panel will be on emerging trends in fashion innovation. First of all, I'm going to introduce to you the things that our panel will going to discuss together. They're going to share the insights under the theme, what are the latest developments in fashion innovation, especially as it relates to sustainability. Now, I'll first invite our moderator on stage, and she'll be talking on this topic with other 5 panelists. So now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Ms. InvestHK, co-founder and Asia Chief Executive Officer of Red Ant Asia. Welcome, Ms. Haka. And now I'll let you introduce our panelists for us.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Hope you're all doing well. Nice to see some friendly faces. So first, please could we have Angus Tang joining us. And second, could we have Esterina Navarino? Next, could we have Joanne Chow? Annika Visser? And Lisa Wong. Okay, can we jump in and get started? Okay, fantastic. Okay, so as you guys heard, I'm Elisa Harker. I'm the co-founder of Red Ant. We are a Chinese marketing agency, and I'm also the vice chair of the British Chamber Retail Committee. And we have 5 amazing speakers with us today. And because we've got 5 big minds with lots of interesting things to share, we thought we better have a pre-meet and actually agree what the trends that we feel are most important to share today are, so that we can dive in deep fast. We only have 40 minutes, so not much time. So we've actually summarized that we have 3 top trends that we think are worth going deep on, because the team that we have here today cover a variety of areas within the retail space. So it's everything from R&D to incubators and accelerators, and also to consumer brands. So without further ado, I'd like to ask each one of the panelists just to kind of tell us a little bit about your current role and how it pertains to fashion innovation, and then we'll tackle each of the 3 trends one by one. Over to you, Angus.
Thank you, Alisa. Good morning, everyone. This is Angus, and I'm from the Muse Fabrica, an innovation platform for Nanfeng Group, commonly known as a property developer here in Hong Kong. So I believe many of us in Hong Kong know that the Muse is a revitalization project here in Hong Kong. And the mission for the Muse Fabrica is to support sustainability, technology innovations in 2 sectors of apparel, textiles, and agriculture and food. So my role with the Muse Fabrica is to help source and evaluate early stage startups in these 2 sectors. Today, I'm very happy to join other panelists to share what we observe regarding the fashion innovations, share our insights with the audience. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Esterina Nervino. I'm an assistant professor at City University of Hong Kong. I work in the Department of English and the Department of Marketing, and I'm also the Associate Director of the Sales and Marketing Consulting Unit, which is a new unit newly created at CTU that basically connects academia and the industry world. I'm interested and I conduct research thanks to the sponsorship of CTU and Hong Kong government on ESG reporting data, particularly in the luxury industry. And I'm currently actually working on a report that looks at consumer attitudes towards ESG claims by brands. So I'm very happy to be here and be able to discuss some of the findings with you today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joanne Chow. I'm a co-founder of Alzalvo. Alzalvo started as an ideas lab. We look at the vertical supply chain and how to help brands actually grow in these difficult and challenging times. We also saw that the technology would enable us the next few years to really evolve. So we have looked at the last few years of how to evolve with the accelerator program where we look at fashion and lifestyle technology. We've looked particularly into 3D printing, virtual realities. We've looked at different teams throughout the world as well as the region on how Holo as well as NFTs could play out in a Web3 and metaverse environment. Of course, previous to that, I come from a family business in textile knitwear manufacturing. On the topic of sustainability, knit itself is actually a very sustainable, reusable product because it comes from fiber itself. And we have looked at wearable tech as well as how to actually reduce less carbon footprint on both washing as well as technology and enables sampling to be reduced. We've seen that actually change a lot the last 3 years. So the carbon footprint have really evolved on both the manufacturing, textile, and testing front in this region. So that's a little bit about me, and I can share more later.
Hello, my name is Annika, and I'm the brand lead of Unspun. Unspun is a fashion tech startup, and we use technology to create perfectly fitted jeans for now. Basically, the concept is you take a 3D body scan. We have algorithms that would then create the jeans, the pattern, to fit your body's spec perfectly. There are different reasons why we do this. One of them is kind of disrupting the supply chain by producing on demand. It's reducing inventory and therefore reducing waste from leftover stock. And also from an inclusivity perspective, because we can make jeans for anybody. You're not just a number or a size. Apart from that, we are also developing a 3D weaving machine. So basically thinking about future innovations in textile manufacturing and how we can, Joanne was mentioning about knitting, we are thinking about the weaving side and how you can basically facilitate a zero waste circular production system with weaving.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa. I'm the sustainability manager for APAC at Lululemon. So Lululemon is an athletic leisure brand, and my focus is mainly on circularity and also to reduce the operation impact of the brand. And I'm very happy to join today's panel and to share more information with all of you later. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. So to let you know the top 3 trends that we're going to dive into. So first one is around alternative materials and production. The second one is around new business models. And the third and final one is around communications and the changing audience. So it was quite hard to narrow it down, but these are the 3 that the panelists felt are the most relevant and have made the most advancements that we can learn from and kind of move into 2003 with kind of focus and intention. So if we tackle the first one, so alternative materials and productions, Angus, could I start with you on this topic? Could you let us know kind of what you're seeing in terms of alternative materials, how it's advanced, and what we should be focusing on?
Yes, sure. So I would say the emergence of alternative materials is surely our trend to watch. As we may know, most of the clothing we are wearing today are composed of polyester, a material that is derived from fossil fuel resources. But there are better alternatives in the market. For example, we have bio-nylon, which is an output as a result of a bioengineering process for the traditional nylon 6 outputs from petrochemicals. And we also have alternative leather for cow leather. And traditionally, the production of nylon and also cattle raising indeed produce a lot of more potent greenhouse gases than CO2 itself. So it's really exciting for us from the Muse Fabrica's point of view as an innovator, as an investor, to see there are startups, companies working on these novel technologies to create these alternative novel materials. So I would say with the help of biotech, we are able to see more and more such novel alternative materials to try to help us gradually deviate from the fossil fuel-based economy.
Right, so I think we'll move down the panel, so please just add to what Angus has shared and with your own perspective.
Well, besides the material, I just would like to draw also the attention of the audience, but also the panelists on color dyeing, because it's another component of the material, if we want, that a lot of scientists have been researching, because even when we talk about natural color dyeing, those ingredients, for example, curcuma or different natural ones that we have, they actually need a lot of land to actually meet the demand of the fashion industry. So I think that particularly if I go back to communication and material, greenwashing is something that comes in because whenever we focus on a single element that is actually out of context, then we incur the risk of actually getting into greenwashing. So it's very important to develop new material, but it's very important to also be transparent of the processes. And I think Angus has given us a great overview on that.
Yes, sorry.
It's okay.
I'd like to also echo to what Angus has mentioned about bio-based materials, and also would like to share what we have been doing. So last year, we have signed a multi-year collaborations with Geomedica, that's our leader in biotech innovations and materials, to develop the bio-based nylon. And actually, this nylon is from industrial dent corn. And in fact, we find that this plant-based nylon, they do have the performance, quality, feel, and also durability, as well as price point as the conventional nylon that we're using. So we will launch this bio-based nylon next year in April. And the second materials that I would like to talk about is last year we also have we'll have a partner with LancerTech, which is a startup in biotech, and we are going to develop a new yarn and fiber with them, which is actually captured using the captured carbon emissions to make it. So these are that we'd like to share. Yeah.
I'm on the other extreme where I've looked at ways in which technology actually reduces sampling. So for example, there's a huge 3D design community now that actually does virtual design. So we've been working a lot with different companies where we looked at how the 3D designs and samples can actually place into a production pipeline to reduce sampling. Of course, the back and forth shipments of it during COVID was very difficult, as well as virtual showrooms, not necessarily the type where it's just everyone experienced virtually, but everyone actually apply it on a manufacturing front where they can use it. So we've seen our whole entire supply chain costs reduce significantly, where we're able to spend the money on our programs. We've been able to spend the money on investing in some of the technologies, including avatars, dressing, 3D dimensions, as well as designing different types of interiors that actually suits these clothing. So we see an emergence because of the way in which waste is a big issue. And we've kind of invested our time in actually the digital supply chain. So that itself is probably still its infancy, because sizing based on a phone still needs more work for accuracy. But we do see it's actually been applied both on the web usage. So on a Web 2, for example, you can use how to choose this clothing based on your sizing, based on your measurements, as well as try it on your own avatar. But we also see based on Web 3, you can actually consume both physically, digitally, and virtually, so which the suppliers itself can receive the details of it and also put it into manufacturing. That itself is quite revolutionary and also can really change how we look at materials. So that's why I've been the other opposite end to look at how technology can be applied to reduce carbon footprint around clock. So yeah, that's what I'm just sharing. A little bit different, but I really respect everyone's biodegradable, sustainable movement here.
So, Joanne, what you just said is exactly what Unspun does. So maybe I won't speak about the materials then. I'd rather speak about the process of how it works. So basically, we do use the phone. Right now, we use the iPhone, the depth sensor on the iPhone X and above camera. You do a quick spin, and it generates a 3D twin of your body, which our system can then pull the measurements from the scan and create a pattern in 3D that gets fitted with these 3D digital model programs. And then gets flattened out into a 2D pattern, printed out, sewn, and gets shipped to the customer. So we completely forego the need for any kind of sampling. And it's also reducing the returns, cost of materials, all of the above. I actually do want to add something about materials. So since we're in the denim industry, I know in the sportswear industry, you're using a lot of polyester and nylon. In denim, cotton is the name of the game. And in the recent years, we've been seeing first it was the increase of like stretch, right? Because everyone wants to wear slim fit, they want to wear skinnies. Slowly, we're moving away from that. So we'll move back into like a monofiber kind of fabric composition, which is also very important when you're thinking about the circularity and the degradation of the garments, because the more complex the blends are, the harder they are to separate, the harder it is to recycle. So yeah, we are moving towards using less and less stretch fibers like elastane and things like that in the denim industry, not necessarily sport.
Yeah, it might not quite work with the Lululemon stuff to avoid stretch. So can I just ask, has anybody had a chance to try Unspun? Love to just see. Yeah, well, we have one person. So, I mean, a plug to Unspun, they're actually going to have a new boutique in Central. Coming up when?
Yeah, so we'll open on the weekend of the 18th of November in Central. It's kind of like a V2 new age retail experience, and we want to do it in Hong Kong. It's going to be the first hub for Unspun.
I mean, that's pretty exciting. I think a new age retail experience in Hong Kong. We've been looking for something for quite some time, but apparently now is the time to try Unspun. Like, if you're not the early adopter, don't worry. Now is the time to get your 3D model. So I'm going to be there for sure. Okay, thank you guys. So our next trend is new business models. I think this is a tough one, right? So especially for the consumer brands in this business, and Lululemon being the biggest one here today, having a new business model must be a huge challenge. And how do you define what that model is, and what's the kind of the time frames in order to kind of pivot from existing models? So Lisa, could we start with you to get your perspective on new business models?
Yeah, sure. So today I would like to share two new business models. First one is circularity, and the second one is the collaborations among key players and also the industry peers to collaborate together. So for circularity, actually, we realized that in the past few years, a lot of brands, from luxury to fast fashion and also to sportswear, they all shift away from the traditional linear model, which means is to make, consume, and waste, which means is to take the resources and then to make the products, to consume, and then dispose as waste in the end. But right now, it's being shifted to a more circular ecosystem to extend the life of the product. So that includes resell, also rental, and also repair. And for us, we actually focus in three areas. The first one is the designing for circularity. And the second is to extend the product life. And the third one is to create new life. So designing for circularity is actually, we train our designers to think in the mind of to have the products circular when they design the products. And the second part, to extend the product life, we have launched our resale platform. It's called Like New in US early this year. And this is actually to sell the second-hand Lululemon gear. And for this, is quite successful in US, and we're going to launch it internationally. And for sure, we will launch in Hong Kong in the coming 1 to 2 years, because Hong Kong do have a very good logistic support. And we're also looking into doing the repair program, as well as explore the remake options. So this is the second focus area. And the third focus area is in creating new life. So we will accelerate the take-back programs and also the trade-in options for our consumers. And also we are exploring as well to in the part of textile to textile recycling. And so this is actually what we are doing as well. And so this is the first trend that I'm talking about. The second trend is the collaborations among the players in the industry. And this actually is a good way, because with only one individual brands doing their own thing is not enough. We need to collaborate together. And the main, the trend of this is to have the joint force to accelerate the actions to reduce the carbon emissions. And for example, early this year, we have announced that we have joined with H&M Group, H&M Foundations, and Smith Family Foundations to be the lead funders to form a $250 million dollar as the Fashion Climate Fund. Actually, is together partnering with the AII, the Apparel Impact Institute. And this fund is to, as I said, is to accelerate the actions to help the industry to reduce the supply chain emissions. So this fund will fund programs that will help the fashion supply chain, for example, to transform into the regenerative electricity, and to improve their energy efficiency, and also to accelerate the innovations of next generation materials, etc. So this is overall what I'd like to share. Yeah.
I think my new business itself is a new business model, just because I come from a traditional textile manufacturing business where I've looked at the world of PE, VCs, as well as government-sponsored incubator serves different needs, but there needs to be a bridge between the three. And I look at ways in which we can combine different ideas in the Ideas Lab to look at investment vehicles, as well as ways in which business cycles evolve. So as an entrepreneur myself, with my own startup, I do think without an understanding of physical technology as well as investments, it's really hard to commercialize in the next few years. And without that know-how, it's very hard to understand, what type of tech is applicable to our industry and how so can we evolve. When I first, started to think, oh, do we have a design team that does this? Do we have a technology team that does this? I realized it can go hand in hand. So, by investing and looking at startups' way of working, we can actually look at how traditional ways of working should evolve. And that itself is a new business altogether. As an accelerator, we look at different startups and the reason why they started, what problem they're solving, and we determine, is that problem big enough to actually take strides. And from there, we look at what are the gaps in their learning journey that we can actually find mentors to mentee. So while we've been stuck in Hong Kong, it's become a global and regional mentor-mentee program where friends of ours in Europe can actually meet up with mentees in Europe to discuss what projects they're working on, why it's relevant to our industry. And we've done that in Thailand, India, Europe, London, Italy, as well as US in LA. So I do think while we're based in Hong Kong, to be able to outreach to people who care about industry and actually evolve has really changed how we look at COVID. And because of that, when I first started to business plan and strategize for this new business model, I actually thought I had 10 years to take this technology turn and evolve. But COVID actually speed everything down to 3 to 5 years. So while I thought I had time to take, look at different technologies, how it's applied over an 8-year cycle, I would say it's now a 2 to 3 year cycle per tech development that we would phase and use it in our industry. And that comes with, as Unspun just mentioned, how you apply it with just a phone, how you sample it with the factories, how you dialogue over drawings and engagement, how to enhance your visual appeal with drapes and mood in virtual world, and how to actually apply it. So that itself COVID's really speed up that change, and we definitely see a lot of government research being spent in this area, as well as a lot of papers being come to theories, being come to realize in actual products. And that itself is really revolutionized fashion. And it can start not just in Israel, but it can start in Hong Kong as well. And that's why when we were talking about would we be replaced, I don't think so, because the supply chain is actually still very relevant on a physical creation. But digital creation with physical actually is very powerful for us moving forward.
And I would like to add to Lisa's point on the circularity models, and especially when she mentions the part design for circularity, it definitely rings the bell, because I think in order to enable such circularity business model to work and succeed, is very important to think in the first step, which is the design stage already, because whether we are making a new pair of jeans or jacket, it's very important for us to consider the types of materials we are going to put in, its design and its sampling, etc. Because if we only think about it after it is produced, then probably we realize that because of the blended materials, because of its design, it's very hard to recycle at the end. So it's very hard to make the circularity work. So I think design for circularity is perhaps something we overlook, but it's a very important first step. And also on the collaboration part, I think apart from collaborating with academia or educational institutions is also important for young innovators to work with established corporates to test their ideas to see whether the solution really fit the market needs and how they can refine their solutions along the way in order to help them test and scale and possibly overcome the recent supply chain turbulence that we see.
And thanks, Angus, because actually you gave me a great assist to mention that I think that nowadays we also need to look at businesses that actually are transforming to become sustainable, and others, younger ones, as Joanna mentioned, that actually were born, if we want, sustainable because driven by these Gen Z leaders that actually want to make an impact in the world. And in terms of business models, I think that that's key, because if businesses want to transform, they need to look back and see how actually their business work. Scope 3 today is one of the maybe most problematic topic, because it's very difficult to track throughout the value chain what's happening and how can you claim that all the processes are actually sustainable. So maybe collaboration, as mentioned by Lisa and Angus, could be a great tool, because why start working on something where I have already a startup maybe that it's doing it and is doing it properly, and they were born with that specific DNA?
So back to Unspun. We basically, I think, another business model, we're talking about circularity, which is also something that's very important to our trajectory. And like Esterina mentioned, I think sometimes it is easier for us to be like, whoa, we can do this, we can do made on demand, we can do it custom, we can build the products from the ground up to be circular. But it is hard for bigger brands understand, who have millions of, thousands of stores globally, massive supply chains. But yeah, so collaboration is really important. But I have seen that, so we do made to order custom, but also just made to order not custom is also a trend that I've seen some brands hopping onto. So say something simple like a t-shirt, and you can choose your special logo design, and then that t-shirt would get made specially for you. And I think as more brands start doing this, we can train the supply chains and start setting up systems that facilitate garments that are made on demand, which solves for the unsold inventory waste. I don't know what the current metric is, but the last time we did some research, I think it was about 20% of all garments that are ever produced go unsold and get discarded before they even reach the customer's hands. So I think, yeah, made to order is another business model that.
There's a few government initiatives, both in the Zhejiang region as well as the bigger Bay Area, that actually looks at how manufacturers can be on a cloud-based system to actually measure that sustainable movement, in which they want to track from the material entering the factory to how it gets produced to actually delivery. So the governments are spending a lot of money in that sense, so that regional factories can come together to actually reduce their carbon footprint and actually do better. So those have all been released the last year. It's really finding the technology vendors and help these manufacturers upgrade to actually use the technology to reduce waste, and of course, pollutions and factories licenses are harder and harder to get these days. With pushing them to be on a cloud-based manufacturing 5G system allows us to actually track everyone in China in this case. So that's why I do think the government understands the need. The manufacturers understand that they need to comply to that need in order to be sustainable. So I do think it's been going that direction, not on just a brand level, but on both the local footprint. We have seen Tencent, Alibaba, and a lot of other tech companies going into this 5G manufacturing space, but looking at smart factories and how it can actually change how we produce and how we communicate with the end brands. So that itself is an enabler, and the government's found a lot of tech companies to enable manufacturers to actually take this step forward. We won't see that until maybe 2 years or 3 years down the road, where all the money will be spent for the right use, but at least it is going in that direction. And yeah, COVID's changed a lot of that.
So is that opt-in, or is it mandated to be part of that?
It's proposed because there's tax incentives for you to actually opt in, and because of demonopolization of technology's involvement in the whole entire supply chain, they actually now have to find local vendors to partner with in order to be more sustainable. So we see government funding out there, smaller players applying with the bigger tech companies, and then looking how factories can be used so in-fire factories actually change in the next few years. So before it would be like, I get a physical paper from you, then I go and manufacture, and I go and wash, and I send it to washing facilities that probably meets the requirements of the government. Now you only have industrial parks that do that, and the whole entire ecosystem is managed like any 5G app, like a smart factory, but it's reduce by days, time, and waste. So you see that on the local level.
Great. So we have just under 10 minutes to go, and we've got our last topic. So it's communications and the changing audience. And actually, Esterina, you proposed the concept of the changing audience to us. So could we start with you? Who is this changing audience, and what's it changed from?
Thank you. So if we look at communication around sustainability and a more structured one about ESG later on throughout the years, we can see that the audience of those type of texts produced by companies on a voluntary base, but more and more on a mandatory, and hopefully mandatory for everyone soon, they actually changed the audience. So first of all, they were mainly directed to shareholders or business stakeholders, but nowadays consumers, they play a big role in actually even giving a feedback, if we want, on the type of communication around products that are advertised as sustainable. In a way, we have seen that companies have been issuing annual reports, environmental reports, but more and more the adoption of social media that are actually targeting those consumers are communicating green claims or social claims. So in my research, I usually look at those type of texts and the type of audience they look at for different reasons. One, because we have been talking about sustainability from the 70s, but at the same time, we have seen this coming into business due to peer pressure coming from consumers with this Gen Z very much into sustainable products and willing to pay a premium, as one of the upcoming reports actually with KPMG, I can see Anson in the audience here, will actually show next month. And also, I mean, in terms of sustainable finance, if we think of M&As where actually investors are willing to pay a premium if your company actually is looking at ESG reporting data. Like we can think of the example of Allbirds and the IPO that they did recently on how much actually of the value was coming from their sustainable attitude. And at the same time, I mean, if we look at communication at large, greenwashing, but also social washing, how are consumers able to detect? In the past, probably we would consider greenwashing just being saying something that actually you are not doing. But nowadays, we get into scope 3, we get into supply chain, and the key is transparency. Nowadays, consumers, they have access to the internet, and they can know exactly what you do. Even ESG ratings agency, they work with non-traditional data. It's not only what you declare, but it's about what the press is saying. So without, I mean, spending more time, I also would like to hear from businesses in terms of communication, what they think is the state of art that we are actually looking at right now.
I definitely agree. Right now, consumers are more and more conscious of greenwashing. And actually, I would like to bring to another angle. It's from the government. Actually, also government, they are more and more conscious of greenwashing. So in the past few months, we can see there are news like in Norway, there is a call out for a major fast fashion brand for mislead sustainability and environmental claims. And also, for example, in US as well, in New York, there is also, is more like for consumers. They also file a lawsuit against fast fashion brand, again, for their messages in advertising and marketing is actually misleading the consumers. And so I see this communication part from, I mean, the government are more and more conscious, not just in US and in Europe, but also in Australia as well. For example, like last month, Australia, they have, there is a department under the government saying that any business doing business in Australia need to prepare to substantiate their environmental and also the sustainability claims, which means actually bring to the businesses, they need to be aware the broad claims that they have done before. For example, using the wordings like eco-friendly, green, also environmental friendly and sustainable. They need to change their marketing and also their advertising practices. So this is, yeah, I would like to share not just the consumers, but also the government. And actually consumers and government will do all this kind of like watchdog for brands.
Oh, the changing audience, I think we can't ignore the Gen Z and millennials that we see today. Post-COVID have a very different perspective. Of course, you see a lot of people going back to nature, finding meditation, going, trying to physically engage now that COVID's coming to an end. But you also see people who are highly reliant on digital and simple messages that we can get across. I do think a good marketing campaign can really change how we look at fashion altogether. And as a result, how we access data is really important, and how we actually determine what data is good, what is news, what's noise, is really very important for the new changing audience, because what I see is now that there's a lot of information out there, people will shop based on that change and based on what their beliefs are. And their beliefs will be very, very strong at this moment in time, whether it's political, economical, social, environment. How we actually come together for the better, I think humanities will tell. But yeah, it's really important to actually be able to speak to that audience and to relate and have empathy, because if not, it's actually very difficult for us to find the positivity in the day-to-day of things. So yeah, fashion can really change. We can add little elements day to day and really make an impact. And I definitely see that in the people we hire, the people we communicate with, and those that have remained in Hong Kong to really make strides to change in the right direction.
Yeah, I think the youth is definitely more educated these days, but are they educated enough? Like, even though we have all of these technological touch points, and you have TikTok, you have Instagram, all of the social media platforms, so we have all this information at our fingertips, and like, I mean, my feed is flooded with all sustainable fashion stuff, but is it really happening? Like, I don't know if we've seen a shift, even though the brands are pushing a lot of these sustainability campaigns and we're trying to educate customers, but have the consumption patterns changed yet? I don't think so. So we still have a lot of work to do in terms of educating. And yeah, now brands need to be careful about what they say, but we still need to say something. Yeah.
There may also be a change in terms of smart technology-enabled fashion, which would change that shift in dialogue. So we've been looking at conductive materials that actually can show you your health monitor and health details. And that shift may actually create the engagement of the need to have everything that's eco and social. So I do think on a technology front or a gaming front or a virtual front, because kids these days are very much immersed in Minecraft, Roblox, and others, their education will start in that space. So we've seen a lot of investments into educational in a virtual world that educates us on the social, environmental needs to improve. So that's why it's how do we connect the two dialogues in one and actually spread it across this education process. So marketing, well, physically, digitally, and virtually is needed for fashion to really evolve as an ecosystem. So yeah, some of the kids teach me a lot these days, you know, so that's why I said, you know, we need a different campaign altogether.
Yeah, definitely. Just to add a little bit to what Annika mentioned, is education definitely is very important. I think because we have been discussing about greenwashing, also consumers are more conscious of that, and government also pressure on that. But then actually a lot of brands, they get scared of communicating. But I don't think this is good because right now consumers, they do understand. I mean, transparency is very, very important. So as long as you're transparent of what you're doing, even with that you're not doing too good or you're not meeting the target yet, but just show what you're doing and be transparent. And actually, we are all know that we are heading to that directions of reducing the carbon emissions.
Closing comment from you, Angus, because our time's up.
Yes, and I think apart from improving consumer mindset among the younger consumers, it will be also helpful to conduct more life cycle assessment studies in the future to help us clarify some of the concepts or dispel the myths with quantitative data to improve communication as a whole.
Great, thank you very much to the fabulous panel. So just to recap, we have the 3 trends that we think are most pertinent: alternative materials and production, new business models, and communications and the changing audience. So thank you, Angus, thank you, Esterina, thank you, Joanne, thank you, Annika, and thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much once again for this wonderful panel, for a discussion and exchange of ideas. Thank you. Please be seated.